Hi and welcome to Hihu, and in this video we're going to be looking at The Last Guardian, a game that came out about a week or so ago and I bought it instantly purely out of impulse. The game, as we all know, was in development hell, and I think they started developing this game back in 2007. They then released a sneak peek in 2009, and then there were some pretty heavy rumors that it was cancelled in more recent years. Made by Team Ico, who made previous games as Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, Team Ico are notorious for making these emotionally impactful games through the use of simple gameplay but heavy symbolism, generally taking a young protagonist on an adventure that changes the player's perception of the world that the character lives within. I first stumbled upon this game many years ago, maybe 2011, with a small gameplay trailer. Originally intended for the PS3, something about it caught my attention, and being an avid gamer, I paid attention to all its hype and then watched it fall off the face of the planet, until now. It's mine, I own it, it's in my PlayStation, and I have finished it, and what an experience it was. I'm sure you've all heard a few other reviews and heard things about the end product of this game, and I do agree there are some things we need to talk about in a little bit more depth than just saying the controls suck, because there's a lot more to this game than just complaining about that. Straight off the bat, it's pretty obvious I really did like this game. It has to be one of the most endearing experiences I have had from a video game in a long time. Coming from playing a lot of fast action games more recently, this has been a really welcome change of pace. So whilst I am going to be focusing on a little bit more of the negatives of the game, that's only because that's what everyone seems to be talking about, and I think it needs a little bit more context to the rest of the industry and the game type, as it's rather important. Let's talk about the game and the story real quick. The game starts off with you playing an unnamed boy waking up in a chasm next to a chained, injured, and disgruntled mythical beast the boy calls Trico, or also known as Toriko. Toriko is the Japanese word for prisoner, which is rather neat considering how the boy and the beast first meet. Starting off, the relationship between the boy and Trico is essentially a mutual understanding that they have to help each other to progress and escape from this ancient kingdom. Where you, the player, is progressing to, not much of that is given to the player. It's assumed by the narration that you and Trico are trying to get back to the boy's village. How you're going to get there and by what means, that's the journey essentially. As the journey progresses, you and Trico form a bond unlike no other. And by unlike no other, I genuinely mean I don't think there's a single game that exists at the moment where they've made the relationship between two characters as important. I mean, playing Ico, you essentially have to hold hands with Yorda whilst escorting her through the game. But this is building relationship between a boy and a giant mythical beast, whose reactions and emotions are symbiotic to how the boy aids him. Looking at one of my favorite games, The Last of Us, a completely different game, yes, but let's look at that game in terms of the bond between Joel and Ellie. Their bond is built between the conversations whilst getting from A to B, the struggles that they have to face, and their individual motives, and the cutscenes that happen in between. But when you are, let's say, playing the game, Ellie doesn't exactly do all that much. I mean, she might throw a brick at an enemy NPC, but aside from that, during gameplay moments, she doesn't further the relationship between Joel and Ellie. The relationship between the boy and Trico, however, is purely built on gameplay, and this is where it is rather interesting. Without giving too much away, there are times where, let's say, you are in grave danger whilst trying to solve a puzzle and help Trico to progress into the next room. And whilst you are being attacked by the armored knights, Trico will enter the room, roar, jump in with lots and lots of aggression and defeat your foes, only then to be so emotionally distraught that you have to climb up onto him and pat him to calm him down. Sometimes Trico will be so fixated also on these stainless steel glass eyes that you'll have to platform your way to them to destroy them. But after these tense moments, you and Trico will be always building a relationship, either in a playful or dramatic way. Again, I've never really had an experience where the relationship is built on such heavily reliant gameplay. The cutscenes are scarce and the gameplay is plentiful. The relationship isn't like dog meat giving him a stim pack in Fallout 4 when he's low on health. If Trico is injured, you'll have to go out of your way to fix his dilemma, from feeding him barrels of food to clambering onto his back and pulling out spears that enemy NPCs have thrown onto him. You have to put in the effort to build this relationship between the boy and the beast, and considering that Trico can't talk, the amount of effort that Team Ico has put into the animations to make him seem like he's a living and breathing thing makes it even more impressive. So many mannerisms are derived from real animals, and I really loved it. But where Trico is impressive, the gameplay maybe not so much, and I'm sure you've all heard reports about The Last Guardian having two main problems: a bad camera and shitty controls. And yes, straight off the bat, I will agree and say, yes, The camera in The Last Guardian is bad. But a bad camera angle will only really ever last a moment, and it was at times that I was never really in trouble. I never really had a true problem with it. In the year 2016, nearly 2017, it's hard to kind of believe that we're still having and listing camera issues as a thing, but it was a very present problem in the game. Whilst this is a complaint, and yes, it is subjective with me saying it's not that big of a deal, I can understand to some that this might be a big no-no. The other main complaint is the controls, and this is where I kind of beg to differ with everyone else in kind of a weird way. Yes, the controls are not conventionally good, but they kind of suit the game in its own strange manner. Recently playing the Uncharted series, the Tomb Raider series, and a few other various platformers, I feel in the year 2016, platforming has become this very easy thing, offering very little threat to the player. The platforming in Uncharted 4 was not that hard. It purely acted as a conversation piece between the characters, while also getting from A to B. The platforming in The Last Guardian, however, is very primitive in comparison, but that makes the challenge more worthwhile. Playing as a young boy, sometimes the jumps were hard and timing was important. Too many times in Uncharted, I noticed as long as Nathan's hands were within the surface's general area, he then will be auto-corrected to the surface to climb up onto. Now, I'm not sure if that makes a whole lot of sense, but hey. It really made me think about what I was doing, but the overall controls weren't that bad. Maybe climbing up onto Trico was annoying, but I would say 8 out of 10 times climbing onto him was fine. As long as you figure out the easiest route to climb up onto Trico, you're sweet. And whilst on the topic of controls, can I just mention, throughout the entire experience of the game, it would constantly be telling me the controls. For example, it would maybe come up telling me that I could grab something or I could climb up onto it. Not that it was patronizing, it's just like, dude, I've been playing this game for 6 hours. I know how to jump. Please stop. Your signposting is perfect. I know how to do things, please. Personally, my biggest issue with this game was, in fact, the combat. You literally have to just mash buttons of these spell-like inscriptions that appear on the screen as the armored knights are taking you away. There is absolutely no skill to this. You are actually just mashing buttons, hoping that the writing goes away to give you freedom and control over the boy back. Having a lack of control over something I don't exactly know what I'm controlling really irritated me, and whilst I never died once for those foes, I found it such a trivial thing. A quick time event like mashing a button 30 times in a short space of time would have been more of an intense moment than just mashing every button on my controller for freedom. One of the other complaints people tend to have is how unresponsive Trico is, but my question to them is, have you ever owned a puppy or a kitten? After the first few hours of the game, you eventually are given the ability to issue commands, and the commands that you give don't always translate to Trico. Sometimes he will not do anything at all, or do it poorly, but I really admire that we're not dealing with this super intellectual creature who can talk. The Last Guardian, yes, it does have major, never-ending story vibes, but Trico isn't Falcor who can have a conversation.
Yeah. I mean, no.
I like children. You were unconscious.
This is a wild beast trying to interpret the movements of a young boy. People are saying that it has to be some of the dumbest AI that they have ever faced, and to be fair, they are just impatient gamers and probably shouldn't be playing this game. This isn't for you. This isn't a fast-paced action game. The most you might have to wait is 30 seconds or so to get Trico to understand what you're trying to get him to do, or he might just do it himself. It's not that big of a deal. It's also been reported that the game rate does have drops in frame rate. These happen from time to time, but at times when no desperation was needed. I'm sure in future patches this will be fixed down the track, but personally this wasn't really game breaking for me. As the game was originally intended for the PlayStation 3, I did not expect to be taken away so much by the graphics. This game is magnificent on all accounts, from the gigantic beautiful ancient architecture and constructs to the individual pieces of grass and the hairs and feathers on Trico's body. This game is often breathtaking. Not so much indoors, but the outdoor areas left me taking screenshots. There was a moment in the later part of the game where it was sunrise, I think, and I was on Trico and we're on top of this pillar looking down at some of the places that we'd been previously in the game, and the sun was beaming on Trico's face. And this is where I was really taken by the art style and the graphics of this game. The soundtrack, also in the tradition of Team Ico, came as to be expected to be very emotive and captivating at the best of times of each scene and location. At times of drama, it was suspenseful, but during the downtimes, the music would let you soak in the world the boy, Trico, and you are currently existing in. The Last Guardian goes for around 10 to 12 hours, and it does have some replayability, maybe the once a year type of play playthrough. It truly has left a mark on me. I really love Trico, and I've never built that type of relationship with a character in-game before. I'm really looking forward to potentially seeing how this game inspires other games in the future. I bought this game at full price, and honestly, if you are contemplating this game, just go out and buy it out of impulse like I did. The entire journey from start to end, particularly with the relationship that the boy and Trico have, is such a great piece of gaming history, and it's also so inherently simple. Let me know what you think of The Last Guardian in the comments below. What animals do you think make up the design of Trico? Personally, I reckon he actually has a little bit of donkey in it. If you like what you're seeing here and you want to see more, hit the like and sub button. This is Shawnee Maurice from Hihu. Thanks for watching.